great. I'm so happy to do it, and you're so nice to want to do it. So thank you.
I really do want to do it, and the main reason I want to do it is because I was very impressed by this movie. I wasn't only moved by it, but I was impressed by it, and I saw it in a theater in Ashland. I don't think you were there. I think you sent someone else to do the Q&A, but I don't know if you've ever been to the festival in Ashland, Oregon.
No, but I'd love to be there, go there one day. They've been so wonderful to me and to the film, and I think Miriam may have been there, and then I may have done a Skype with Ashland as well at some point, but they've been really terrific.
Yeah. So basically what happened was that there was this enormous room full of people of a certain age, you know, as you're familiar. And the thing I'd love to know, for starters, is when Sheila Nevins approached you with this, your gut reaction, your first gut reaction was what?
Was no way. There's no way I'm going to do this. You can imagine, being from my family, I've been asked over the years to do a number of films about my family, and I've always refused, mostly for personal reasons. And when Sheila suggested doing a film about my mother, you know, I know my mother, and I know how much she doesn't like interviews and being asked questions, and how she would it would be a very uncomfortable process. And I was always, you know, not so comfortable with the idea of doing films about my family, so I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And then she kept coming back to me and saying, this is really important. And truthfully, at the time, we had been talking to my mother about doing a book, because, you know, I do feel that my mother had such an extraordinary life, and she's such a remarkable person, and so few people have had the chance to know her and to meet her and to have that exposure. And so my siblings and I had been encouraging her to do a book, and she had refused, and, you know, we really wasn't so interested in doing that. And so, you know, Sheila was very persistent, and I felt like, okay, fine, I'll ask my mother. I know my mother, she'll say no. And then I asked my mother, and my mother said yes, which really surprised me. And then I sort of panicked about it, and then I thought about it and felt, you know, really she does need to tell her story, and she's not going to do it on her own. And probably the only way she's going to do it, if it's going to be done, is in this process, is you know, through a documentary with me. And so I felt like I should do it. And
oh, great. So it was a way to honor your mother too, and since you were the youngest sibling, the one of 11 children who grew up without your father, it was a way to honor the person who raised you. And what I also wondered was why you think she wanted to participate. That is interesting. It seems out of character.
Well, I asked her afterwards why she said yes, and she said, well, because you asked me to. You know, I'll do anything for you.
Aww.
So that was very sweet. And I think that's actually true, that, you know, it really came out of her feeling like, you know, she wanted to do something, you know, she wanted to do what I asked her to do. And, you know, but again, I feel like she does have a story, and there have been a lot of documentaries about my family and books and whatnot, and I did feel that her narrative hadn't really been told, and she has something interesting to say, and I think she has something to add to the mix.
Well, you also interview all of your siblings. How many siblings did you interview? 8? Is that right?
7.
7?
I think 7.
And what were the rules? Did they sort of say to you, I'll talk to you, but I want to have some control over what you use? Did you have to show them stuff?
No, none of them asked to see it, and none of them had any editorial control.
They trusted you.
Including my mother. Yeah, they did. So that was nice. And you know, they were all really, you know, I think for everybody it's a bit uncomfortable, frankly, because it is talking about, you know, we've all had an extraordinarily, I think, gifted life, and that we've all been so lucky in the lives we've had, but there's also a lot of sadness there, and a lot of things that are hard to talk about, and we're not, I wouldn't say we're kind of an oversharing family, per se. So I think that it was uncomfortable, and everybody knew going into this that I would have to ask hard questions. And, so there was discomfort with that. But despite that, they all felt like it was important to do it. And I really didn't pressure any of them to do it because I wanted them to do it on their own accord and feel that they wanted to do it. And, so I explained to them what I was doing and said I would love for them to participate. They should do what they want. And so, they all jumped in, and we're really terrific, I think.
Now, as far as the archival footage that you use, it really works well the way you take the footage that we're all too familiar with and blend it in a different way with the home movies. And I wondered if the home movies had been familiar to you, whether you went and searched and found things that you had never seen before, and whether there was stuff there that has never been seen by anyone before now.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that I had never seen before and that my siblings had never seen before. I don't think my mother had seen a lot of the footage. A lot of the footage of the Skakels, my mother's family growing up, had never seen any of that. I'm not sure my mother had seen that. Certainly my siblings hadn't.
Where did it all come from?
Well, that footage came from the Skakels. One of my cousins on the Skakel side had put it together, had found the footage, and then put it together on VHS format, and then we had a very hard time finding the original footage, which ultimately we found kind of in a closet somewhere, but it was a big undertaking to identify that. And then there was a lot of other footage that was taken by family friends. Red Fay lives up in San Francisco, was an old friend of my mother and father's, and he had taken a lot of footage along the way. Art Buchwald, who was also a family friend, taken a lot of footage, so I used footage from both of them. And then, some of it was at the Kennedy Library. The truth is that my grandfather had run a studio in Hollywood and really understood P. Kennedy, appreciated the power of medium and how important it was to preserve these moments, and did a lot of filming of the children when they were very young. And he was very invested in it, so he wanted to preserve the footage, and he put it in a building that was meant to preserve it and preserve other footage from some of the studios, but it burned down in like the 1950s, unfortunately. So all of this great family footage from when my father was young, unfortunately, doesn't exist anymore. But there was a lot of footage in there that I hadn't seen, that nobody's seen before. Certainly the public hasn't seen. And I think that interweaving it, with the narrative of my mother and my siblings' stories, I hope adds kind of a personal dimension to our family story, to my mother's story, that really isn't out there in the world.
No, it was wonderful to see. I mean, you must have been aware, but I suspect that when you took the movie out on the film festival circuit, this became even more apparent to you. For those of my people like me, I grew up with Carolyn Kennedy and John and these characters in my life, the royal family that we all know about, the Kennedy family. They all of these people are very, very powerful characters in our lives, and we're very fond of them. And did you realize how? I mean, you kind of knew it, I'm sure, but did you realize how much that was true? And did you find that true when you went around to the festivals, from audience reaction?
It's been really humbling and just a wonderful experience going around with the film, and I think it is what you're touching on, that it is this kind of collective history, and of course it's my history on a very personal level, but it's not just my history, it's not just my mother's history. It is it's so interwoven with our history as a country, these events that my parents went through and were really, in many ways my father, my uncle leading us through these events in history and participating in it on the front lines. And I think it does speak to people, and I hope, that was my hope with it, is the interweaving these kind of moments, the civil rights movement, the Cuban Missile Crisis, in, and